Good afternoon. This is Rob Bell, and you're watching Getting the Record Straight. It is Friday afternoon. Hope everybody has a good weekend, notwithstanding the fact that we're still dealing with this coronavirus. So please stay safe. Put your mask on, your gloves, whatever you need to do. Keep the social distancing happening. And by the way, please subscribe to our YouTube station here, Getting the Record Straight, trying to bring you the best in thought leaders and people who are doing things in the community, as well as really trying to share some things artistically and musically that are going on in Philadelphia. With that in mind, this is the Black Rock and Soul edition of Getting the Record Straight, and I have a guest who I've wanted to talk to for a while. I listened to her radio program on WRTI here at Temple University in Philadelphia, and her name is Bobbi Booker. Bobbi is an accomplished radio personality, and she can be heard, as I said, on WRTI, Temple University. She's the executive producer and host of the Spirit Soul Music edition of WRTI's Ovations radio show. And she's a host of Jazz Through the Night, which can also be heard on that station. She's worked as a radio reporter, assignment editor, and executive producer for Metro and Shadow Traffic Networks, WWDB, and several other stations. She's an award-winning journalist who's written for NPR Books, Black America Web, and the Philadelphia Inquirer, and some other periodicals. Currently, she's serving her second term as president of the Pen and Pencil Club of Philadelphia, which is the oldest journalists club in the United States and the second oldest in the world. So I'm excited to have on Bobbi Booker, lady about town, about Philadelphia. Bobbi, thanks for coming on. How are you?
Oh, salutations indeed. It's my honor to partake in this programming, especially since I'm a champion of every type of medium that exists so that we can get these messages out and across to folk wherever they're at in this world.
Mm-hmm. And it's particularly important right now, I think, where, obviously we have the mainstream media, but independent media and what's going on over the internet, I think has become increasingly important to really get information to folks who need it. I have to say, I've never met Bobbi, but we've talked briefly because I'm one of the people who calls her on WRTI and says, what is it that you were playing just now? I remember you told me that a Steely Dan cut, Bright Nightgown, I think it was, you were playing one Sunday morning. And I eventually put that on my playlist. I do a Black Rock and Soul YouTube playlist twice a week, and that was featured one time. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate what you do on WRTI. By the way, when can people hear your program?
Spirit Soul Music, which is now celebrating its 21st anniversary this year, is on every second Sunday from 6 to 9 a.m. on WRTI 90.1. And additionally, my role at the station has evolved to now include their Monday through Friday overnight programming, which is called Jazz Through the Night. So I'm on every weeknight or every weekday morning, shall we say, from midnight to 6 a.m.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay. That's fantastic. And so how did you get started with Spirit Soul Music, that particular program? I had Warren on a couple of weeks ago, which was a treat. And, I love that brother, and had an opportunity to see him perform a couple of times. And I tell people all the time, if you haven't seen Warren sing, or heard him actually, you're really missing out on something. But so how did you hook up with him to do, to start doing your program?
Well, as you indicated, I've been involved in radio for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
and my initial roots in radio is as a news person. I trained to be a radio news reporter, but
Mm-hmm.
I also made sure that I studied everything.
Mm-hmm.
So while I had the opportunity, I always I would sit in with the air jocks. I would hang out with the sports reporters.
Mm-hmm.
I would produce weekend talk shows.
Sure.
I just basically did everything.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of my tutelage, I had the opportunity to very early on in my scholastic and professional career encounter Reggie Bryant,
Right. Okay.
who actually we are now 10 years hence his passing.
Yeah.
It's something that that always gets me.
Mm-hmm.
But Reggie at that point, we're talking the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
He was involved with WRTI and was at one point appointed the interim station manager. But more notably, he hosted a talk show called Catharsis.
Right.
And it was part of the public affairs
Mm-hmm.
programming at the time with the station. And it was must listen to radio. So I became one of his two or three producers that he had in rotation, and eventually moved up the ranks to become his executive producer of that show,
Mm-hmm.
and followed him to a couple of stations. But that also was the beginning of a professional and personal relationship and mentorship that lasted until his death.
Mm-hmm.
That relationship also included meeting and knowing some of the other people that were in Reggie's circle, and that was Warren Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
When Warren Cooper's Ovations program had been underway for a good bit, when his co-host had departed, and he went on the search for another person to take over that position. And Reggie immediately told him, me. And for folk who don't know, I know, Bobbi Booker is the name that I wrote under for years, but for a very long time, I was known as Robin Booker on the radio.
Okay.
And I don't think Warren could see it, but since we were both under Reggie's tutelage, he invited me to become the co-host, and it took me I will be honest, it took me a few years to kind of settle into that position, because I was not exactly used to 5 a.m. on a Sunday prepping for a show.
Right. I can imagine.
So, look, it was a journey, but it's a journey that I really learned to appreciate, and thus that show, or that kind of branch of Ovation was born and extended, and eventually did become Spirit Soul Music.
And talk a little more about kind of the concept and what it is that you try to, bring out and promote with that particular show, because it has a certain brand to it, if you will, and I love it. I haven't been able to get into it like the last month or so because of some changes and what have you, because of the virus with my schedule, but I really do enjoy it a great deal, and it seems like it has a certain, what is the word that I want to say, aura to it, and But anyway, can you kind of expound on that a little bit? What you hope to achieve, if you will, when you're doing your show or when you conceived it?
Well, I kind of, I'm a native Philadelphian. I
Mm-hmm.
grew up, steeped in radio culture
Mm-hmm.
when radio was definitely an extension of our community at large. And when I say our community, I don't just mean the African American community, although that was definitely a
Mm-hmm.
formidable stabilizer. Radio served as
Mm-hmm.
a huge voice and connector. But I also, we grew up
Mm-hmm.
when radio was a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
So being in Philly, and especially during the 60s and the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
when there was that potent era in the 70s, when there was that message in the music,
Mm-hmm.
when social consciousness was at the forefront of the beat.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just about shaking your booty. It was about what your duty was to your community.
Absolutely.
And those are messages that have continued to hold a special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So when I approach doing what I do with Spirit Soul Music, I'm always thinking about that message, and not just how it can be presented in a tune that's preaching at you to get saved. It's about the message that's in more eclectic places.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try and find those artists that are a little outside the box, shall we say,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
and are still have their finger on the pulse of what it takes to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And learning how to do the right thing also means, stepping back and taking a look within.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always looking for those tunes that are massaging that type of message into, the dynamic of your essence. One of my tags is in your ear and on your mind. And, I feel very strongly about that. Just something to make you think a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about what it takes to do the right thing in all the manners of your life.
Can we stop for a moment and get back to that? I want to stop for about 10 seconds. Is that okay?
Okay with me.
Okay.